Okay, now let's continue with the cost in the long run production. Okay, so just now I have already explained on the short run production. Alright, so how do we obtain the long run cost curve? Okay, first you need to understand what do we mean by long run. Okay, long run is a period of time for a production in which it can expand its inputs. For example, before this you only have one building, okay, for you to produce your product, but in the long run you can have one building or two buildings, or you can add many more buildings. So now that building, which previously was considered as fixed input, in the long run it will be considered as variable inputs, because you can add, you can expand the number of fixed input that you have in the short run. Okay, so now building is considered as variable input. Okay, so now, okay, long run is a period where there are only variable factors and no fixed costs involved. So again, I repeat this one. In the long run, all inputs are considered as variable input. Okay, and long run total cost starts from origin because of the absence of total fixed costs. Okay, since there is no fixed cost in the long run, so your total cost will start from origin. Okay, meaning start from zero. Okay, and it shows the minimum cost of producing any given output when all of the inputs are variable. Okay, now let's look at this slide here. Okay, long run is a period where firms plan how to minimize average cost. Okay, so in the long run, as a producer, you will always want to produce your product at the minimum cost, as minimum as possible. Okay, because your main objective is to gain as much profit. So you have, in order to gain more profit, you have to minimize, or you have to reduce your cost of production. So you always want to produce your product at the minimum cost as possible. So in the long run, you actually will get this curve, the red one here. Okay, this red curve here is actually generated from the short run average cost. Okay, so let's say here you have different short run average cost. So assuming the first short run average cost here is what you get when you only have one building, for example, and the second short run average cost here is the average cost curve that you get from owning two buildings, okay, for your production and so on. So you will have different short run average cost, okay, in this one graph, and this short run average cost will have the minimum point here, 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 and here, and here. So as you connect all the minimum points from the short run average cost, okay, you connect all these points, what you will get is basically the long run average cost. So what we can say here is long run average cost is generated from the short run, from the minimum short run average cost. Okay, alright, so it is a U shape due to the law of returns to scale. So later on we are going to look at what we mean by return to scale. Okay, so as you expand your production, you can actually notice that there will be a change in your management of production, how you manage your cost, how you manage your inputs, labor, capital, and so on, so that you can gain efficient production and you can get more return from your production. Okay, so we have different stages of return to scale. So if you can see from this curve here, long run average cost, okay, so we can divide it into three different stages or concept of return to scale. So at the first stage here, you notice that your average cost is decreasing. So this actually indicates a good situation in the production. Okay, because you can reduce your cost of production, you can reduce your average cost of production. So this is a point that we call as increasing return to scale. Okay, so what do we mean by increasing return to scale? We are going to look at in the next slide later on. Okay, and then you will reach a point where your average cost will be a bit constant. It doesn't change as much. That is the second concept that we call as constant return to scale. Alright, and then the third one, you can see here, okay, at this stage, your long run average cost is increasing. Okay, so when cost is increasing, it shows a decreasing return to scale, because at this point, as you produce more and more, your cost is increasing and increasing. So what are the reasons? Okay, for increasing return to scale, it happens because of what we call as economies of scale. Okay, and decreasing return to scale happens because of these economies of scale. So what do we mean by economies of scale and these economies of scale? Economies of scale is a situation where you actually gain better return, or you actually gain benefits when you expand your production. So as you produce more and more and more, you will gain benefit from your production. So how do you know whether you get benefit? Is when your long run average cost is decreasing. You can reduce your long run average cost when you produce more of that particular product. So that is what you can see in the first stage here. Your long run average cost is decreasing because of economies of scale. How can you, what are the factors that can cause economies of scale? Okay, we have marketing economies, financial economies, labor economies, technical economies, and so on. So we are going to look at that later, okay, in the next slide. Alright, now let's look at this. What do we mean by these economies of scale first? Okay, these economies of scale is a situation in a production where you will face a problem as you expand your production. As you produce more and more, it will no longer give you benefit, or it will no longer give you higher return. Okay, how do you know whether it gives you higher return or not? You can see in this curve here. Okay, at this stage, your average cost is increasing. Okay, there is an increase in your average cost. So what are the reasons, or what are the factors that can cause your average cost to increase? Is because of mismanagement, competition, or labor diseconomies, and so on. Alright, now let's look at what are the factors that can cause a production to experience economies of scale. So again, look at the concept of economies of scale. It is a benefit or advantages that a firm get from increasing the number of production. Okay, and you can see that from the reduction in the average cost of production. Okay, so there are two factors. I will divide it into internal factors and external factors. So apa sebab ataupun apa penyumbang boleh berlakunya pengurangan pada kos dalam menghasilkan sesuatu produk? Okay, what are the factors that can reduce the cost when you want to produce a certain product? So the first one, let's look at the internal factors which happen inside an organization. So it doesn't take into account external factors. So we are looking at what happens inside the production. Okay, so the first one is labor economies. Okay, labor economies is talking about specialization. Okay, because as you expand your production, you will require more labors. Okay, and when you have more labors, you can specialize. Okay, your labor can specialize. Okay, let's say if you own a restaurant, okay, one labor can take over the counter. Okay, another labor can be the the cook. Okay, another labor can be a kitchen helper. Another labor can take orders and so on. So if you have more labors, you can specialize your labor for each job scope. Okay, for different job scopes. So they are more, the arrangement is more efficient. Okay, meaning each labor knows what they need to do or what are their roles in the production. So that will lead to an efficient process of production. That is labor economies. Managerial economies is in terms of management, meaning you will have different departments in your organization or in your production. So this department is specialized to hire laborers. This department is specialized to do marketing. This department is specialized to create ideas on what to produce or what kind of food they want to serve to the customers and so on. So managerial economies, okay, managerial economies is talking about efficient management, okay, in which you have different departments for different job scope. Alright, so everything is more structured, okay, in the production. Marketing economies is talking about, for example, the supply of production or the supply of raw materials that you need for your production. Okay, let's say you want to produce noodle. Okay, of course you need to have raw materials such as chicken, or you need the noodle itself, the raw noodle, and then you need soup, for example, ketchup, and so on. So all those raw materials, okay, usually when you buy individually, you will have to pay higher. But once in the long run, you can actually buy those products or those raw materials in bulk. Okay, buy raw materials in bulk. So the benefit here is you can get these raw materials at a cheaper price. Okay, so that is in terms of marketing economies. Okay, in terms of your supplies in your production. And then technical economies. Okay, technical economies is, for example, in terms of the technique of production. Okay, technique of production. So in the long run, you are able to increase the use of technology, use of better technology in your production, so that you can increase your productivity. Okay, so this will benefit you in terms of efficiency. Alright, financial economies. Financial economies. Okay, usually in the long run, okay, you will have a proper record of your sales, okay, of your returns, the cost of production, and so on. And you will have a good financial record, okay, a proper financial record, and that will help in terms of obtaining or acquiring more loans, okay, or financial aid in the future to add to your capital. Okay, since you have good records of finance, okay, in your production, okay, good financial record, it is easier for you to apply for loans to increase your capital and so on. And investors are more convinced of investing in your production or investing in your business, because you are already in the market for a long period of time. So they are more convinced to invest money in your business. So financial here is in terms of financial record. Okay, in the long run, you have good financial record and people trust you in terms of giving loans and in terms of acquiring investment to add to your capital. Alright. Okay, for risk-bearing economies, okay, it means that in the long run, okay, producers are able to absorb risk even better as compared in the long run. Okay, absorbing risk meaning you can manage your risk from making losses. Okay, so here risk bearing economies. Okay, you can minimize your risk of losses, making losses. Okay, so how do you minimize the risk of making losses? Maybe you can diversify your production. Instead of producing just one type of product, you can diversify your products. Okay, let's say instead of just selling noodles, you can diversify or you can vary your products from selling noodle to selling rice or spaghetti and so on. So that is example of diversification to reduce the risk of making losses. Let's say from selling just noodle, okay, maybe there is a risk of making losses from just selling noodles. So now you have other products, so you can gain revenue or you can gain profit from selling different types of products. So that is risk bearing in the long run. And then in terms of transportation ataupun storage, okay, so in the long run you are able to own your own transportation facilities. You are able to acquire your own storage space, okay, meaning you can add more buildings to store your raw materials and so on, or you can have more place to store your raw materials. Okay, so in terms of having your own transportation, or you can have a bigger storage area in the long run. So it is easier for you to manage your production, okay, to manage your raw materials, your inputs, and to manage in terms of transportation and so on. Alright, now let's look at the external factors that can contribute to economies of scale. So external factors are factors other than inside or internal factors inside the organization. For example, the first one, you can have economies of government action, meaning the government, okay, the government action or government policies can help in increasing the economies of scale, or contributing to more return for a certain production in terms of creating more infrastructure for the production to happen. Okay, or you can see government action here in terms of giving more subsidies or tax incentive or tax cut and so on. So all these government policies will help the producers to reduce their cost of production, for example subsidies and so on. Okay, that can help in reducing the cost of production, so and eventually creating economies of scale. Okay, and then economies of concentration. Concentration means a certain area is concentrated. Everything is there in that particular area. Okay, so for the producer to get a supply of raw materials are easy. Okay, so the producer doesn't have to go far away or very far from his place to gain raw or to acquire raw materials. Okay, so this producer can actually get raw materials from near his place. Okay, that is what we mean by economies of concentration. Okay, so easy to get, easy access to raw materials and so on. Okay, and then economies of information. Okay, so economies of information is information, for example, information in terms of the market, in terms of how do you how can you get or obtain more efficient production and so on, which you can obtain from attending workshops or seminars, okay, seminars or workshop or training. Okay, alright, so that is in terms of economies of information. And then the last one is in terms of economies of marketing. Okay, let me clear this one first. Okay, economies of marketing in terms of external factor is that in the long run, okay, you don't have to do much advertising, okay, for your product, because in the long run your products will be well known. Okay, products are already well known, so you can actually reduce the cost of, or reduce the need for marketing or advertisement. Okay, so that is in terms of marketing economies, okay, in terms of external factor. Alright, now let's look at these economies of scale, okay, which can happen as you are in the long run production, or as you expand your production, which requires you to have more inputs. So when you have too many inputs, okay, in your production, that will lead to these economies of scale because of, for example, mismanagement. Okay, it is hard for you to manage too many labors. You have to maintain so many machineries in your production and so on, and then you have to face so many competition in the market, right? So those are examples of factors that can contribute to these economies of scale in a production. So now let's look at the factors individually. So the first one is internal factor, again, which usually are the factors coming from inside the production or inside the organization. So the first one is what we call as labor diseconomies. Just now we talked about labor economies, okay, which you have a certain number of labor, and that will give you efficient production because or efficient management because of specialization. But as you have too many labors in your production, okay, these labors will no longer see that they need to specialize. Or what I can say is, for example, like I have mentioned just now, when you have too many labors, these labors will basically do the same job, or 3 to 4 people are doing the same job. So that will lead to what we call as overcrowding. They don't know what they need to do in that organization, or they don't know their specific role in that production. So that is contributing to inefficient management of labor. Okay, you have too many labor in the production, and you cannot give specific job for each labor. Okay, and then in terms of management problem, okay, usually when you expand your production, okay, you will have too many labors to manage. You will have too many inputs, for example, too many departments to look at, and that will lead to miscommunication in the organization or in the production. Okay, and for example, lack of supervision. Okay, so as you expand, you need more supervision, okay, for each of the specialized department. Alright, and then in terms of technical difficulties, for example, when you are already too long in the production, or when you are in a long run production, okay, usually your machineries will eventually broke down, okay, and you need to replace that machineries with a new one. So as you are in the production for too long, okay, at some point you will have to incur additional costs to replace old machineries or old equipments and so on. So that is in terms of example of technical difficulties that could happen that will contribute to these economies of scale. Alright, and now external factors, okay, faktor-faktor luaran. Okay, example of external factors are in terms of scarcity of raw materials. Okay, when you use too much of a certain raw material, too much of a certain resource for your production, eventually the resources will be depleted. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to spend more to acquire that raw materials, because that raw materials will become more expensive because now the supply has become very limited. So you will have to spend more to purchase that raw materials. Okay, and then in terms of wage differential, okay, in order for you to retain the labor that you have, okay, in the long run you will have to pay higher salaries, okay, to maintain or to retain the workers, okay, in your production. Alright, and then in terms of concentration problem, when you are at a concentrated area, okay, in the long run, usually what you will experience is you will experience more competition. Okay, let's say for example your products now is not only produced by you, but the products are now produced by other producers as well. So you might need to spend more in order for you to compete with other producers, okay, in the long run. So that is external factor. Okay, economies of scope and these economies of scope is the two concepts to explain a situation where a producer wants to produce different types of products. So just now we talked about just one type of product. Now we are looking at the economies of scope in terms of producing different types of product. Okay, so economies of scope, okay, appear when an individual firm's output or two different products is higher than the output reached by two different firms, each producing a single product. So that means two different products, okay, can be sold in different firms. Okay, let's say for example, if I put it here, okay, you have product X, okay, product X and product Y. Okay, so product X and product Y can actually be sold separately in different firms by different producer. So let's say firm A is able to produce 5 product X, okay, and firm A does not produce product Y. So product Y is produced by firm B, and firm B is able to produce 4 products Y. Okay, 4 product Y. Okay, so the total production by firm A is 5 and the total production by firm B is 4. And these two products, okay, can actually be produced in the same firm. Okay, assuming that they are using the same input. Okay, so firm C can actually produce product X. Okay, let's say 6 product X and 6 product Y, so the total would be 12. So firm C can actually produce more of product X and more of product Y under the same roof, because they are basically utilizing the same labor, the same machineries to produce these two products. Okay, so the production here is more efficient as compared to producing the products individually. So this product X and product Y is better if they are produced together in one firm or in one production, so that economies of scope can happen. Alright, and these economies of scope, okay, this happens when the production of an individual firms, okay, when the production of one product might be inconsistent with the production of the other product. Okay, this is an example where the two products are better to be sold separately as compared to be sold in one firm. Okay, so let's say you have product X and product Y, and then you have firm A. And firm A produces both product X and product Y. Let's say firm A is able to produce 2 product X and 2 product Y, and the total would be 4. Okay, if firm A produces both product X and product Y, assuming this product X and product Y are using different types of inputs or raw materials, so the cost of production will be a bit higher, okay, because they are using different inputs. Okay, so what can happen here is there will be these economies of scope because of inefficiency. So what will happen is it is better that this product X and Y are produced differently or separately by different firms. So let's say firm B only focus on producing product X and firm B is able to produce 4 product X, for example, and then firm C focus on producing product Y and they can produce 5 product Y. So now you can see that the production of X by firm B is 4, the production of Y by firm C is 5. So that will total up to 9. Okay, the total is 9. So that is higher as compared to 4, okay, of product X and product Y produced by firm A. So this is where these economies of scope happen. Right? Okay, next let's look at another part of this topic, which is on the concept of revenue. Okay, so just now we have looked at the calculation of cost in a production. Now let's look at how a producer can calculate the revenue that he will get after he sells his products. Okay, so what do we mean by total revenue? This is actually what I have explained in the previous topic. Okay, the total revenue is actually the quantity of products that you manage to sell at a certain price level. So total revenue is basically your sales lah. Okay, what you get after you sell your product. So how much is the quantity of product that you manage to sell, and how much is the price of each quantity of product that you have sold. Alright, so that is how you calculate total revenue. Okay, so revenue is actually different from profit. Don't get these two terms confused. Okay, profit is actually what you get after you have reduced deduct total revenue with total cost. So revenue is what you get after you sell your product. Profit is what you get after your revenue is deduct with your total cost. Okay, so total revenue is your price times the quantity that you sold. Alright, average revenue is the total revenue per unit output. So average revenue is actually the revenue, okay, that when you spread for among the quantity of products that you manage to sell. So basically, what is the revenue that you get from selling 1 unit of the product? So average revenue, to calculate average revenue, is the total revenue you divide with quantity, and the formula for total revenue is price times quantity. So basically you can actually cancel this off. So average revenue is actually equals to price. Okay, average revenue is actually equals to price. Alright, and then we can also calculate marginal revenue, which is the additional revenue that you can get when you sell additional unit of your product. Okay, so to calculate marginal revenue is the change in your total revenue, how much your total revenue change when you change the quantity of the products that you sell. Alright, for example, if you look at this table, you are given the quantity of products, okay, that you can sell at a different price level. Okay, so now you can actually calculate the total revenue. Okay, quantity you multiply with the price, so you get the total revenue. You can also calculate the average revenue, and average revenue is actually equals to price. This one and this one. Okay, because average revenue is total revenue you divide with the quantity, so you will basically get the price. Marginal revenue, okay, now let me show you how to calculate marginal revenue. It's basically the same with how you calculate marginal product and marginal cost and so on. So let's say you take here okay, marginal revenue, okay, this one, how do you get 40 is the change in the total revenue, which is from 500 to 900. So change in total revenue is 900 minus 500. You divide with the change in the quantity, that is 10 to 20. So 20 minus 10. So 400 divide with 10, you will get RM 40 marginal revenue. So as you sell another unit of the product or another unit of the product, you will get additional revenue of 40 ringgit. Okay, alright. Now we can actually learn the concept of revenue in different types of market structure. Okay, so market structure I will divide generally into two types. Okay, the first one is what we call as perfect market. The second one is imperfect market. Okay, so let me list here. Okay, sekejap ni. So the perfect market, okay, we have two types, which is perfect market. Okay, characteristics of perfect market is that individual firm cannot affect the market price. Okay, meaning they are price takers. Firms in the perfect market have to just accept the price in the market. Let's say if they sell fruits, for example, apple, for example, the price of apple in the market is 6 ringgit per kg, for example. So what they need to do is they need to sell the apple at 5 ringgit per kg. They need to follow the market price because they are price takers. And the price in the market, in the perfect market, okay, that will depend on, or it is based on market demand and market supply. Okay, it depends on the equilibrium price. Okay, so example of perfect market is perfect competition market, which we are going to learn in the next topic. Alright, and then the second one we have imperfect market, where they are actually price makers, meaning they can decide on their own price. Okay, and individual firms in this imperfect market can affect the market price. Okay, examples of imperfect markets are monopolistic competition, monopoly market, and oligopoly. So we are going to learn these three in the next topic. Okay, this one also. So we have 4 types of market structure: perfect competition, monopolistic competition, monopoly, and oligopoly. So the only example for perfect market is perfect competition market. Alright, now let's look at this slide here. So you can see that under perfect market, okay, even though the quantity increase or decrease, the price remains the same, meaning regardless of how much they manage to sell, okay, they have to sell it at 10 ringgit, for example, because they are price takers. Okay, so they have to accept the market price. Right? So now, how do you calculate the total revenue? You use the formula just now, which is quantity of the product, you multiply with the price of the product, so you get the total revenue. So the higher the quantity, the higher the total revenue. Meanwhile, average revenue and marginal revenue is the same with the price. For example, to calculate average revenue is total revenue divided with quantity. So 10 divided with 1, that will equal to 10. 20 divided with 2, that will also equal to 10. So basically, your average revenue and marginal revenue will be the same with the price of the product. That is for perfect market. So when you draw the graph for revenue, okay, the average revenue curve, marginal revenue curve, and demand is actually on the same line here. Okay, this red curve here, red line here represents the price, okay, the average revenue, the marginal revenue, and the demand for products under perfect market. Okay, and then for imperfect market, it's a bit different from perfect market, okay, because they can change the price of their products. For example, as you can see here, when the product sold is 1, the price is 10. If they can sell more of the products, the price will be 9. Okay, and so on. So when the price becomes cheaper, they are able to sell more. Alright, so the total revenue will increase here, and the average revenue will decrease. Okay, average revenue is total revenue divided with the quantity. Marginal revenue will also decrease. Okay, so when you plot the graph for average revenue and marginal revenue, you will have a separate curves. So average revenue will be higher than marginal revenue. So this is the graph for revenue under imperfect market, meaning for monopolistic competition, for monopoly as well as oligopoly. The graph or the curve for average revenue and marginal revenue will be like this. Okay, what you can see in the slide. So we are going to learn about these market structures, okay, perfect market and imperfect market, in detail in the next topic. Alright, so that's it for topic 6.